We believe that we need to lead with optimism and hope, and that's not blind optimism, it's optimism based on action.
Welcome to the CSO Impact Podcast, where we talk to leaders in sustainability. We're discussing how we can work in a way that makes a positive impact on the planet. I'm your host, Harald Neidhardt, and in this episode, I'm really proud to say that we're talking to Karen Pflug, Chief Sustainability Officer at IKEA, or more precisely the Ingka Group, one of the franchisees of the IKEA brand. Karen was also the winner of the Gold CSO Award in 24 in Davos this year, and it's so special for me to see you in the studio. So welcome, Karen. How are you today? So great to see you.
Thanks, Harold. Fantastic to be here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And thank you for inviting me. All good from my side, actually. Lots of energy. Just been on half-term trip back to the UK with the kids. So filled up on favourite foods and lots of hugs from the family, which is always nice.
That sounds fantastic. Great start. Alrighty. Let's start by talking about your role as a CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer, and you're also a member of the management board. So that's a great way how you are in the company and the governance. Maybe let's start about talking a little bit about what are the initiatives that you are currently involved with. And I think we say the IKEA brand, and maybe you explain how the franchisees thing works. But then, for easier, let's talk about the IKEA brand. So let's share a little bit about your role.
Yeah. So yes, a good point, I think, to just clarify a little bit where we sit within the overall IKEA ecosystem. So Ingka Group, as you pointed out, is one of the franchisees. We're the largest franchisee. So we represent over 90% of the sales. We have around 400 stores around the world and over 600 million visits to our stores, as well as a huge online presence as well. So we're very much driven by the values of IKEA, which is to create a better everyday life for the many people. Our vision really drives us. And we've been around for 80 years. It was 80-year anniversary last year, originally set up in Sweden by Ingvar Kamprad. And it's really a source of pride for me, I think, that even before sustainability was a thing or it was trendy or whatever, that it really ingrained into our culture and values has been this being super careful with resources, reducing waste, reducing costs. We used to say we don't ship air. So Flatpack was created to make sure we minimize that. Originally about saving money and passing those savings on to customers. But of course, now that when you look at it through the sustainability lens, has a big impact. For many, many decades, sustainability has been ingrained into the culture of IKEA. It's one of our key values, caring for people and planet as well. And that therefore means that my role is made easier because I'm working for a purpose-led company that's very driven in making a positive impact and using our size and scale as a force for good. And then Ingka also has an investments arm, which I can talk a little bit more about later, where we use that a lot for sustainability investments, particularly around energy and circular, which is brilliant. And we have meeting places as well, where we can also really look at our neighbourhoods approach, working very closely with the local societies where we operate. So the role is very varied. I do report into I sit on what we call group management, which is a sort of most senior management team within the organisation. And then we report into our supervisory board, working extremely closely and directly with the CFO and the CEO, both of whom need to be my best friends from a business point of view, because we need to really integrate sustainability into the heart of everything we're doing. So that's a big chunk of my time. It's about leading and transforming rather than the sort of perhaps technical nature of sustainability, making sure that it lands on the business agenda everywhere.
Already so many questions, but maybe just a follow-up. So you have been with the company now 10 years, so congratulations. 10 out of the 80, maybe the most, let's say, influential on the way forward, on our sustainability road, and especially of yours. So, and your, as you mentioned, your areas of influence are so rich. So you talk about circular and nature, which probably includes climate, biodiversity, forests, just to give a couple of hints then, equality and fairness, so including human rights, healthy and sustainable living, from energy to vegetarian cat bulla. So there's a lot in the store. So it's not only the wood part, it's the food, and obviously your community caring and involvement with the communities. So maybe you could just kind of touch upon some of the actual work and maybe something you're proud of, but and maybe just let's say with a lens of what is maybe some of the achievements you kind of did and are proud of the last 10 years in all of these areas, or pick one, or I mean there's so much to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been 10 amazing years. It's gone very quickly, often as it does when you're very busy and engaged with your role. I've been in this role as CSO for 3 years. So I started actually in IKEA of Sweden on the design and development side. That's my background, textile designer originally, many years ago, and driving the quality agenda. And we have a thing in IKEA called democratic design, where we look at form, function, sustainability, low price, and quality all together. So every single product that is designed needs to go through that lens. So my role there originally was really looking at reducing waste, using the right materials from the start, making sure that we got things right first time. And that then has an impact on sustainability, of course, if you do all those right decisions from the start. So the two, quality and sustainability, are probably the two biggest passions of mine from a democratic design perspective. And then I think when I now look at my role as CSO for the last 3 years, I think there's so many things that we touch on. I like to think of us moving our agenda in 4 main ways. We have the offer to our customers. You've touched on that a little bit, and that can be the plant-based meals. And we really want to have 50% by next year, 50% of our offer in our restaurants being plant-based. A lot of people forget, well, maybe they don't forget because, of course, our food is iconic, particularly the meatballs. So we're very proud to have the plant balls. But we have almost 700 million people that eat in our restaurants each year. So we're one of the largest restaurants in the world. So that switch to plant-based foods and helping customers make more informed decisions. They don't need to feel guilty or beaten up about it. It's about making sure that they have the right option. We've made it a lower price than the meat-based alternative, which then has a financial incentive as well as a sustainability incentive. So that's one of our drivers. But as well as that, the wider approach to our product offer, whether it's, the second hand, the spare parts, 24 million spare parts sent out for all the little nuts and bolts. So if you move house and lose a bit from your bookcase or your Hemnes bookcase or whatever, and you can't find it, we do not want you to get rid of the product. We want you to be able to get that, so they repair it and build it again. So they get sent out for free. It's about helping customers make wiser decisions on saving energy, switching to LED. It's a given in Europe. It's not a given everywhere yet. We made LED affordable for the many people, switching to only rechargeable batteries. You cannot buy an old style battery in IKEA anymore. So we then, as I said before, using our force and size and scale as a force for good to help customers change their behaviour. Then we've got our Ingka investments arm, where we have got a very big agenda, particularly on energy, where we're committed to 2030 to invest 7.5 billion euros on renewables. And that's what we call additionality as well. It's not just buying someone else's solar or wind. It's actually creating new. So helping the overall transformation of society to renewables faster. We also invest in recycling mattresses, stopping over 1 million mattresses a year going to landfill in the Netherlands and Belgium and so on. So it's great. It's such a brilliant privilege to have that investment arm for us. Then we have our own operations. We've got to get our own house in order, and we can't just sort of help the world do better. We have to do better ourselves. So it's switching to renewable heating and cooling, renewable electricity. We're on around 75% now in our stores and want to get to 100% as fast as we can, aiming for next year as much as we can. Zero emission deliveries with e-vehicles, switching to that as fast as we can as well. So there's a lot of transitioning in our own operations, reducing our waste and so on. And then advocacy. So yes, let's use that brand name. We're scrutinized, we're challenged, which we think quite rightly we should be. But then also we can work with policymakers and we can work with NGOs, stakeholders, society and other businesses to pull everybody along together. So, yeah, so much going on that never done.
And I mean, I have to applaud you and obviously the team around you. I think, Jasper, the CEO, he is basically writing all of the right letters, for leadership with purpose and, drumming up other CEOs to get into the front lines of, hey, we need to do this. And then you have 10 brands, committing, and IKEA is always up front. So I think it's really palpable or noticeable how you actually drive this and are really at the right places. I remember during COP Glasgow, there was a IKEA exhibition of some of the sustainability things you did, and I didn't find it yet. It's in the box, but I still have your basically the Bible. Explaining all of the things. I think you did a book just for the employees or all of the IKEA team. Maybe you can talk about that, because I felt this book needs to get out to be open source to other companies. Just tell people from little steps what this could be. Maybe just as an anecdote, how was that coming to life, or maybe just as a little history lesson almost already 2 years ago.
I mean, we had a little bit of fun with the title because we called it Assembly Guide for the Future, because obviously we're famous for our assembly guides, and we did share it. It was primarily for our co-workers around the world, but of course it's available public knowledge and information, and we do want to help people to learn and grow. It had mostly a climate angle because it was timed for the Glasgow COP, as you said, but of course a lot of that, when you look at climate, the intersectionality between that and inequalities, or circular as a solution for climate, for example. So everything that we have in our sustainability strategy around our fair and equal and human rights agenda, around climate, around circular and around healthy and sustainable living was all sort of encapsulated, looking at it through the climate lens. And then as well as that, the exhibition we had there, we've also repeated for the last 2 years in New York at Climate Week with what we call an Action Speaks Summit, because we believe that we need to lead with optimism and hope. And that's not blind optimism. It's optimism based on action, hence the name of the exhibition. And that's all about really making sure that we share that solutions exist. And that's the thing that energizes me. I mean, it's very easy in this space to get quite doom and gloom when you're working with sustainability every day, but so many of the solutions exist. So the more we can help share that, the better. And we've now launched it as an online platform as well. So it's not just a physical space for 1 week in New York.
Oh, cool. But we will share the link somehow in the description. I think that would be super cool, because it was just a nice, very inspiring exhibition. And I also saw that you actually, I noticed that you also talked about moonshots. So there was something about, I don't know, even the next 200 years or something really crazy, which is not crazy if you love innovation and driving a change. So I think...
I think the thing there is that because of our setup, because we're owned by a foundation now, that's something Ingvar did many, many years ago. And then we either reinvest back in the company, or the money goes towards the IKEA Foundation, which is our philanthropic arm. We can think in generations. So I do realize that I'm in an extremely fortunate position as a CSO to work for a company that can think that long term. And then that also drives other things like our focus on, we work with young leaders. So as well as the Assembly Guide to the Future, we've also created a Young Leaders Playbook where we have totally independent people from around the world. They have to be young, and they talk to the old leaders, to us, the management team and our supervisory board, and they hold us to account. And they are from many markets where we don't even operate, in Africa, in Asia and South America, as well as the sort of other countries where we do operate. And they are real activists and super passionate about inequality, about climate topics, about all sorts of things that matter to all generations today, but particularly young people. So we've open sourced that playbook for people to be able to, we can share the link for that as well, to understand what it would take for them to do a similar thing with young leaders as well. So no holds barred conversations and very challenging topics get discussed.
So what do you think is the secret of making all of these new things cool? You know, as you said, maybe LED lamps. So, when you start your new home and then you had the choices and then all of a sudden, no, it was only that choice. And you knew at IKEA, okay, I always do something good because that were the choices you offered. And now the battery, if that's only rechargeable, well, if I want to be cool, have IKEA stuff in my home, then I might as well be renewable. So it's almost not, as you said, it's not to make people feel bad or guilty. No. It's just like, hey, here's an easy way. Let's do it. And you have a funny name and then people adopt it.
That I can't pronounce, very rarely can pronounce. I mean, Billy's a really easy one, of course, but some of them are tricky. I'm sure they do it to keep us on our toes, the guys doing the creative names. I think one thing for us, I mentioned democratic design before. For us, it's about making sure that our customers around the world don't need to choose between saving money, their own health and well-being and what matters to their family and doing good for the planet or nature. So we've decided and made a conscious decision with our business model that we won't make sustainable choices more expensive. And I've had many debates and discussions with other people, particularly in New York, a month ago on that. And whether it should be a premium for sustainable products. And we've made a conscious decision for it not to be, because right from the start, Ingvar felt that anybody, even with what he would call the thinnest wallets, should be able to afford great design. So we've taken that notion and stretched it into great design and sustainable living so that we make it easier, because it shouldn't be, I go left to save the planet when I'm walking down the IKEA store aisle or right to look after my wallet. We need to combine both. And because we're large enough to then drive whole changes in the value chain, we can use our volumes as a force for good there as well. So it means that even if it means more expensive for us, we take the hit from a cost point of view with the start and the innovation, knowing that longer term, the costs will come down. Other companies can jump on board and tap into the innovation as well. So that's one thing. And then, as you say, it's about not making people feel guilty. We run a report every couple of years where we, together with GlobeScan, ask customers what are they most concerned about both inequality and climate. And many of them are extremely worried, in the 68 to 70%, and in some of our countries, 80 to 90%, and particularly younger people. And then they're worried about it. They want to do something about it, but they often don't know what to do that'll have the biggest impact. So even if people don't buy an IKEA product, if we can help educate them on what are the better choices to make in their everyday lives, I feel we've contributed there to people living more healthy and sustainably without it costing them more money.
We covered already a lot of ground, but I want to come back to you. So obviously you don't have a Dutch accent. You work for a Swedish company. You're probably British. You live in the Netherlands. So how did you land in your role? Tell us a little bit about Karen's journey to sustainability.
You're right. I don't have a Dutch accent or a Swedish accent. I am British and New Zealand. I have a dual nationality for both. I've been lucky enough to live in 8 different countries around the world. And I think every country I've lived in has had an IKEA store. So it's always been like going home when you're sort of new, going from first time when you were a student and so on to sort of setting up a new home wherever you live. The one that didn't have IKEA store was actually New Zealand. And that's coming the end of next year, hopefully.
All right. The last white spot on the map.
Yeah, the Kiwis, I know, are super happy and really excited about that because, of course, they're very well travelled and they know all about IKEA from their travelling. But started as a textile designer, grew up wanting to be anything from a designer to a landscape architect and a vet. Grew up listening to and watching David Attenborough, big focus on nature, super passionate about, like many young people, wanting to save species from extinction, being worried about acid rain, moved to New Zealand, and it was the hole in the ozone layer, which is actually one of our success stories as a society, as a human race, that we've managed to solve.
We should do the same with methane now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it shows when we all pull together, we can actually make it work. But moving to New Zealand and Australia many years ago, when it was still a problem, being extremely worried about that. I mean, that combined with the fact that my final year thesis in textile design was actually focused on what I then called eco-textiles for home furnishings, without knowing that I would go full circle and end up working for IKEA in sustainability. In between, worked for sportswear and fashion brands and like Nike and so on. So I've often worked for bigger brands where you can have a big impact with the size and scale that you have, and also drive innovation. So my background is not perhaps the orthodox sustainability approach, but I think I bring my creative thinking, my design thinking into solving problems and trying to drive transformational change. And then I have a team of very good experts in my team, of course. So we definitely need that expertise as well within the sustainability space.
But isn't that typical? I don't know if there is actually at the acting CSOs who are in charge right now, there is not a traditional way. Everybody came from so many different backgrounds, and you couldn't study it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when true. You started your journey. I don't know anybody who, I mean, from the people we talk to right now, everybody come, oh yeah, I was in legal, I was this and this, and then passion moved them to the right, I think, position.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call, actually. And now I've got 2 children and my daughter's getting ready to look at universities, and I'm sort of going, oh, there's all these sustainability degrees. I feel like I wish I was a student again. And
Exactly.
She's very interested in environmental sciences, but of course she's got to choose her own path. But it's great. There's so many options now where you can make a difference in all areas.
What would you say the role of the CSO is, evolving in the next 5 or 10 years? Because as we know, if more young people come into the profession, more companies have to start reporting. In Europe alone, I think 50,000 new companies about CSRD. So it's a huge talent gap. So what you see, first of all, is sort of the role of the CSO going forward?
I think, obviously, I've been doing it for 3 years, which is not a huge amount of time, but I've worked very closely with the previous people who were in that role at IKEA and also elsewhere. I would say it has evolved quite rapidly recently, where it has moved away from needing to be experts in science and technical, but very much about being a chief change maker, I guess, or strategist. And it really needs to be about driving that transformational change and making sure sustainability is integrated into the everyday business decisions, whether that's on the financial or the legal or the commercial agenda as well. And I think it's also the job of the CSO to really show and work with the commercial teams to show that sustainability can be a commercial advantage. And we know that sustainability is a key driver of brand trust. We know brand trust drives more loyalty, which then is a business benefit, of course, with customers who are more likely to stick with you and want to shop with you versus a competition. So being able to prove that it's a business benefit, and also then being able to communicate in a way that talks the right language. So talk business language, talk commercial language. Don't come with loads of science jargon and hundreds of acronyms, because 3 years in, I can remember almost sort of my eyes glazing over about all the acronyms and scientific information, especially in the climate space, but also in the human rights space as well. So speaking the right same language, I think, is super important, and driving change and innovation and inspiring communication. So really leading the vision of the company. You need a seat at the table. And so you need to be in the right meetings where business decisions are being made, not separate sustainability team on the side whilst everyone else carries on with their day jobs, so to speak.
So what would be an example? Let's say, okay, you are in the management team and there's a new, regulation coming, and you call to either your product team or somebody else as a department and say, hey, can I have a meeting with you? What is it? Oh, Karen has a new legal thing. We have to do a new policy reporting. Or are they more inspired and say, all right, the meeting will be interesting, but we all know we're already pulling in the right direction. How would you and then let's maybe the characteristics. So as you move into these sometimes maybe difficult meetings, what would you say is let's say some leadership skill that is helping you a lot? You said communication. People say there's a chief sustainability orchestrator, pulling everybody together. So What is your take on this one?
Well, I think from the skills required, obviously you've mentioned the orchestration, which I think is super important, and I mentioned the communication in inspiring ways on people's terms so they can relate to what you're saying and understand it. But I also think there's a lot of resilience needed, and perhaps maybe you can teach resilience, I don't know, but we're seeing with the people that we hire into our team as well, because the topic is so heavy and because you can take those challenges home with you, they weigh on your heart, they weigh on your shoulders, and you sort of think, oh my gosh, we're trying to save the world and so on. The resilience and optimistic approach is super important, and bringing that positive energy to work every day and not letting things get you down, I think, and being solutions focused is super important. So the leading with optimism and a can-do spirit is important, and that's also what helps with IKEA and Ingka Group is that's core to our values anyway. Working together, collaborating, being able to lead in the unknown, and empowering others. And I think one of my key learnings as I've got older as a leader and a manager of people is to not feel like I have to solve all the problems myself. So that can be quite tempting, particularly when you're young and a female as well, perhaps. You come in and you think, I've got to prove myself to the world, and I've got to prove that I know how to do this and solve things. And then realizing actually people know better, and they are the experts, and they're the ones that know their part of the business. If we're doing zero emission deliveries, then I talk to the people who can then order the trucks and sort out the infrastructure and the charging and the driver's contracts, and they take ownership. So because we're so purpose-led, the people that work for IKEA, I think, all want to make a difference. They're drawn to IKEA because they share those values. Then it doesn't mean that it's all happy in every meeting. Sometimes there's a lot of debate. They have short-term challenges they've got to make. They've got to hit the costs, the resource challenges. So it's not super easy, definitely not. But knowing the vision, the end game, our 2030 goals, our halving emissions, and we've got to around 24% now since our baseline in 16, so we've still got a way to go. But all having those same KPIs and being super clear on how we follow up and measure is helpful when you're talking to business leaders, because everyone loves having KPIs to measure and challenge yourself with.
Well, they probably like the bonus better and the KPIs that work towards it. So there was already an answer to another question I will skip, but in your sector, what is maybe some of the biggest challenge in the transition to a more sustainable model? I mean, we're dealing with forests, biodiversity, people, consumer growth, if you will, as a company. Luckily, you're not a public company, you're more foundation model, but every company wants to grow and have a bigger impact and win. So what is sort of a huge challenge in this kind of transition mode?
There's many, of course. I would say the journey to hit our targets, aligned with science-based targets and the Paris Agreement. Of course, we've been aligned with that for many years now, but then actually delivering on those plans. One thing is to get it approved by the SBTi. The other is to actually then deliver and have tangible plans in place and follow up on those. So I think that work is ongoing. And for us, the biggest chunk of our climate emissions sits in our materials, as it would with many. So our scope 3 is well over, I think it's about 98% for us as a business. And of that, around half sits in the product. So our team at IKEA, who do all the design and development, are on a real sort of journey to switch over to more renewable and recycled materials. And that will benefit nature as well. So that switch to being more circular as an organization, both for the products, but as a total business model, where from a retail side, the part we control, looking at buyback models, looking at peer-to-peer testing that we're testing now in Oslo and Madrid to see how we can help customers keep products in use for longer. So in the retail part, we can help with customer behaviors and driving that and our own operations. And then the design and development team are working hard to transition to more circular materials. So I think the transition from a linear business model for the last 80 years to a circular one for any retailer is probably one of the biggest challenges that we face.
Now, you touched upon your kids, and maybe I want to leave the listeners with a closing question. More people come into sustainability jobs, want to do impact, and what would you give them, first of all, as a recommendation? If the initial idea is, yes, I'll go to an NGO and ask, work in the Southern Hemisphere and help doing things there, or I can go into a business, a big corporate, and in the Western world, and do my bit there. First of all, what is so intriguing about working in a big corporate? And secondly, maybe what are one or two other tips that you would give to the next generation of sustainability managers, leaders who want to get into this line of work?
Well, first of all, I think it's the best job in the world, and I wish I'd gone into it sooner. Just the feeling that you can really have an impact. And NGOs around the world, including our own IKEA Foundation, do amazing work directly on the ground, solving very difficult problems for people. So I absolutely applaud and celebrate the work that they're doing. And then the benefits of working for a large organisation, which is financially secure and so on, is that we can also think long term and invest. And when we decide to do something and change something, then we can sort of move mountains. So it's that, I guess, a buzz or adrenaline from being able to think, gosh, if we do this right, we will really help millions of people around the world have a better everyday and more sustainable life, and will drive industry-wide change. So that's quite a buzz for someone. Yes. I'm quite competitive, so I think that's really energizing. But then, of course, it comes with big responsibility that we take seriously. And then I would say, as a tip for people, is to don't think you have to be in a sustainability role to contribute, because every single part of the business can contribute, but find a company that's aligned with your own why. And it can sound a bit corny, and you hear a lot about this sort of today, but I do think that if you work somewhere where your own purpose and moral compass is truly aligned with where you're working, then you'll get your best out of yourself and contribute the most. So stay true and be truly authentic and honest. And don't be afraid to ask for help. But as I said before, my learning is about making sure I can say when I don't know the answer, and ask for help. Collaboration is key. We're not going to solve this on our own.
Thank you so much. I think you're a prime example of, first of all, the right energy and bringing so much passion into the job, and make, I think, all of us feel alive, but also feel, let's say, rest assured that they're the humans at work in their roles as CSOs across their organizations, but really doing a global impact with global brands. That's what we need. And so thank you for your work. I applaud you for your really cool transition over the last 10 years and beyond, from your beginning from textile for furniture, turning all around. And we could speak another hour. I cannot wait to see you in person next time. And travel safe. We need you, and thank you so much for your time. And if you are interested in other, inspiring leaders like Karen, please follow our CSO Impact Podcast. But again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Karen, and congrats again on being the gold winner of the CSO Award 24. We're going to see who is the winner next Davos. So thank you, Karen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And also thank you so much for the recognition of the award. It's great for the whole team to feel that the work we're doing is recognized. So thank you so much.